Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special Goat's Eye View, where we're doing the Goats of Spire, a campaign retrospective. I am Galway Trainer. I'm one of the founders of Helpful Goat Gaming, a small independent game design and game content creation community. And I am joined by all of these wonderful people, and hopefully my camera doesn't like re-reverse on stream so that I'm gesturing the wrong way, which is the cast and crew of Spire, which just recently wrapped up its first arc season, however we want to describe that. I'm not sure. Have we come to a consensus on that, Elise?
No, we've been calling it both of those things. So no.
First chunk. And so everyone is going to be on here tonight to get to chat about the game, how it went, answer questions that you all might have. So as a quick reminder for everybody, you can catch us streaming D&D content, TTRPG content, things like that here on Twitch at twitch.tv/helpfulgoat. You can also check out our archives at YouTube. Just look for Helpful Goat Gaming. And if you enjoy our conversations, getting to, interact with wonderful people like Chelsea, who drops poems into Twitch chat to let us know that we are live and that tech is working, you can use the !Discord command to get a link to join our Discord. It's a really wonderful community. It is a huge portion of what has been getting me through 2020 generally. Throughout this year. So yeah, I encourage you to use that command, follow the link, join us, and hang out. As a quick programming note, tomorrow evening you will be able to see the sort of middle row of the Hollywood Squares-ish layout that we're getting at the moment, and myself in a D&D campaign, Tier Moontree Isle, in which they're playing. I am DMing, and that is an enormous amount of fun. I'm going to go ahead and...
I'm kidding. It's so much fun.
Don't you me, Elise.
I'm just kidding, Galway. It's
I know.
honestly a highlight every time.
No, but yeah, we're fine. I'm the MC of this. I expect to take some flack. I will go ahead and let everyone go ahead and introduce themselves, maybe starting with Elise, and then we can get to questions that you all submit in our Discord. And like I said, feel free to drop more questions in Twitch chat. We are monitoring it, though it's very far away from my sightline at the moment.
Hello, I'm Elise. Oh my gosh, I'm the GM of Spire, and here we are. After our first arc season chunk. No, the other way, Rachel.
Yep. Wait.
You're pointing into the abyss on my screen, and that's the one that matters. Directly to the side.
I had to pull up my Twitch chat to see which direction.
Okay, here's the thing though. Even if it were mirrored, you would still need to be pointing at me in your camera view.
There it is.
Just like that. Well done.
Can I get you?
Got it.
I think that's it. Okay.
This is going bad as expected.
Yeah. Anyway, hey, I'm so thrilled to be here without having had to prep anything. It's great. I didn't at any point today sit down and look at my roommate and go, I should prep stuff for Spire, shouldn't I? So that was great. Thanks for taking the brunt of that off my shoulders, Galway. And who's next?
I'll go next. Sure.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Ava. I play Minrai in the Spire campaign. I'm in another group with Elise, and she introduced me. And when she said, "Hey, I'm going to be DMing this really cool, super depressing, dark, elfy world where you can be a midwife," I was like, "Yeah, I'm here." So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I had a lot of fun. Minrai kind of blossomed into a character that I really loved. And
for the record, Ava's sister is the one who gifted me Spire as a book, the handbook.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was. And yes, so thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren. Shout out.
And she, being my dearest best friend, oldest best friend, Lauren was like, have this. And then I was like, I want to run a campaign in it. And then Ava ended up in the campaign. And how beautiful is that?
Circle of life or something. All right, I get to choose the next person. We'll popcorn it. I choose Kelvy.
Hi, y'all. I am Kelvy, and I am played by Tyler. No. I play Kelvy, also known as Kelvy Bugman. Had a super fun time with this thing. Slowly but surely turning into a bug. Not one yet, so that's great. And yeah.
Apparently, you get to pick the next person.
This thing?
Yeah, you got to popcorn. You got to pick them.
You say me?
You?
Wait, on my screen, you pointed to me. So, wait, let's see. Where are you? No, I get.
You pointed to me.
It was intentional. Everybody pointed at Sam intentionally.
Anyway, hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, Rachel.
I already am in a lot of things here, so you probably know from things. I'm good at talks. I am friends with Elise in the real world. Not that I guess the internet's not the real world. In the in-person flesh world?
In the flesh world.
In the flesh world.
In the thinking flesh world.
Listen, that's why I play the cannibal.
Say it in your Barnabas voice.
Your
Why?
flesh buds.
We're flesh friends.
This is why Rachel played a cannibal. Same thing.
So yeah, hi. I don't remember what else I was supposed to say other than saying I'm Rachel and I played Barnabas.
That was most of it. I think you also brought Sweet Pea to life, which was important.
I did. She's
her
very
most
cute.
important accomplishment to date.
And now you have to pick
about
someone.
that, Rachel?
I mean, accurate. I haven't done much.
Imagine your love.
Everyone stops.
Twitch app.
Looks.
Sorry, in case anyone wanted to know.
Andrew.
That's me. I'm Andrew. And I have been playing Genis in this game of Spire, which I found out about because Elise's cousin and I have been good friends since high school. And when it was made known that Elise was running this game, I was super excited to join. And that is actually also how I found Helpful Goat. So it has been a very good time for me. And I'm going to pass it over to Sam then. It's everything about me. There's nothing else.
Nothing to know.
Andrew's actually just going to log off. It's like, I have no answers to anything else. This is it.
The man of mystery.
Okay.
Andrew is also a DM for those who don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
It's true.
Yes, this is true. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam. The character that I played was Ulrich Rick Mir. And yeah, he was basically the healer dad of the group, who had a bit of a change of heart at the very end of things. But yeah.
Does that make me the grandpa?
I think it does.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Sweet Pea, the grandma of the group?
Ava is like healer mom. So we had healer mom, healer dad, cannibal grandpa, bug son?
Bug money?
Creepy uncle. Bug creepy uncle.
Killer son?
You're pointing at me on my screen when you did that, by the way, and I'm like, I was not involved. I did nothing bad to these people. Do not blame me.
Whatever, murderer.
No, that's Tyr. That's tomorrow. That I take responsibility for.
Everybody feel very calm about that. Nobody worry.
Yeah.
Smile and nod.
All right. Well, with introductions, and again, I wanted to also take a moment from Helpful Goat, and I would also say our chat. Thank you all so much for having played in that wonderful campaign, having done such a wonderful job with it, and having streamed it for us. I know that was definitely a thing that I watched as much as I was capable of in the crushing late stage capitalism that we have. I'm not going to specify that I was working after hours because Elise will yell at me then, because that's what she does. Oh God, she's staring at me. Moving on to the first question. Moving on to the first question. We talked about this a little bit already, but how did this campaign of Spire get started? So, like, Elise, what gave you you said you got the book and you kind of wanted to run it, but what was it about Spire that really made you want to run it, and how did you contact people for it?
Well, I was gifted the book along with like a bunch of other one-shots. So for those of you who've done like any of the Grant Howitt one-shots, he is also one of the 2, I think, authors on Spire. I think now there's a 3rd who's been incorporated into the expansion and the extra material that's been published. So it was just kind of bought and gifted to me in a big pack of like, here's a bunch of Grant Howitt stuff from my oldest friend Lauren. And so I love rule books. I love to learn rule systems. And after kind of voraciously consuming D&D rule books, I was like, I guess it's time to voraciously consume other rule books. And so I was reading some of the other ones that I had that were gifted and then to me, and then this one just sounded really cool. I was like, oh God, there's so many weird things. And like the humor is so bizarre in this world. And like, Grant Howitt has such a sharp wit, and like the way that the book is written is just like incredible. And so at a certain point I was like, okay, I kind of want to do this. And I wanted to play in it, which is, I feel like such a GM mood of like, I want to play this. I'll never find someone to GM this for me, so I might as well GM it. And so at that point, I just kind of put out the call into the world, and we had still have, but it's pretty much dead, another Discord server towards the beginning of quarantine, when everything was kind of at its worst in quarantine. And I was just like, let's play something, and then put it also in Helpful Goat to recruit. And these are the people who showed up and said, yeah, let's go. So that's how we got it going. And then happily the expansion book, Strata, it's called, for Spire. So there's just 2 books, which unlike D&D, right, where you've got like thousands of books and so many rules to like consult and check on, and you can Google them all. Like on this one, if something's not in those books, you just kind of wing it, and that's been really interesting. But I'm sure we'll get to that later. And so in Strata, they actually have a couple like campaign starter ideas. And so the like getting evicted storyline is part of that campaign starter, one of the many that are included. But of course, we ended up not following it very closely once we kind of got it off the ground. So yeah.
Do you know any of the other like basic like plot hooks off the top of your head? Yeah,
well, not super closely. One of the reasons I chose this one as opposed to choosing some of the other ones was that Spire being such a dark world, a lot of them had stronger trigger warnings from the get-go around suicide, sexual assault, non-consensual body modification, which we kind of touched on here and there in our campaign, but like for a lot of the other campaigns, like those themes were front and center in the kind of hooks. And so in order to kind of avoid making that like mandatory part of our experience, I was like, I kind of wanted to pick one that I had the chance to not necessarily include those things, especially once I got y'all's consent forms back, and just kind of and my own like discomfort with including anything more than kind of like vague referencing towards some of those themes. And so that was one of the main reasons I picked this one as opposed to the other ones, though it certainly had its shortcomings too, around like, the pressure can feeling of like 7 days, forcing y'all to split up, which we've talked about meta a lot. And, things that I just kind of learned as a GM of like, oh, if you force a group of 6 or 5 of you into you have 7 days and a lot to do, then of course, especially without combat, which is a major difference between D&D and Spire, then of course the party's going to split everywhere, and we're going to have a month of Tuesdays. So
I love the month of Tuesday.
it was really something. Yeah.
It was just getting messages from you that were like occasionally, at least, with like, did you watch that? We're still in Tuesday. Like, oh yeah, you're gonna be there. You're gonna be there for a while. I can tell you
Tuesday
this.
for a bit, and then Thursday was long too. Wednesday was shorter, but Tuesday and Thursday were
the epics of this. Yeah, and I think that for the context of how it ended up streaming, at least you'd sort of been talking to me about how, hey, yeah, we're going to be doing this, and you were planning.
Was so last minute.
Yeah, and you were like, well, I'm planning to stream it. I'm like, okay, I could, if you want to stream it on Helpful Goat, I can help you set it up and stuff, and we'd all be fine with that. And we're like, yeah, and the thing that I most remember, and I said this before we went live, but like, I remember being like, how long do you think this is going to go? And you're like, 6 sessions tops, probably 4 or 5. I think Tuesday was 6 sessions.
Surely, yeah. That was, I mean, it was literally just like, we weren't going to stream it until the day of. And then like, I had a couple friends that I told Lauren, right? Because I was like, hey, the book you got me, we're using it. And a few other people who were just like, I might pop in and watch that if you stream it. And I was like, I'll ask. And so I asked everyone here, and they were all like, yeah, sure, we can stream it. And then I was like, I'll just throw it on my personal Twitch account, which I never fucking use. And just so that people can see it, and then like told, and then it just kind of spiraled from there into like, and now it's on Helpful Goat every Thursday for 8 months.
Well, I for one am very glad that it ended up on Helpful.
Me too, and thank you for just throwing us in there at last minute like that. That was awesome, and it worked out nicely. So
yeah, no, I was really glad to have it on there, and I thought it was a really good story and tone, especially at the sort of time that we're in the situation of the world that we're in. And I thought everyone, like I said, did a beautiful job with it, and I had a lot of confidence as well that like Elise was going to do a great job with the story. So I was happy to have more stuff on, have more voices, because like I said, we have the sort of focused approach, and we've been trying to figure out ways to get more people involved with helping tell stories and showcasing more people. So that was really great.
I'll say real quick, one thing that at least touched on this a little bit, like it is a little doom and gloom, but a lot of Spire is like that really offbeat comedy. Like I think it has that element to it. So while everybody's saying like, yeah, it was dark and it had a lot of like trigger warning themes and things like that, it also had, I mean, at least for me, it was like one of the most like comedic groups that I've been in, just between everything, between Minrai and Barnabas and Kelby turning into a bug and Hennis rolling nat 20s all the time, or nat 10s, I guess. And then like the goats with hands, and then like Rick being like drugs. It was a lot of fun,
Oh, and it absolutely was. And I would say that, I mean, I'd also let chat who had watched this comment on this, but for me, I was consistently laughing my ass off while you guys were playing. Like, and it was like, yes, okay, this is dark and horrifying, and now we're serious. And then, Ava would be like, feed to spiders? We're like, okay, and we're back.
Yeah.
And so you also touched on one of the first questions that we'd actually gotten in Discord from Adam for all of you, generally, what differences did you find in terms of like mechanics or storytelling approach from like different TTRPG systems that you might have played? D&D is one, but I mean, there's lots of them. So anything you have experience with, what did you find different, and what elements did you particularly enjoy? Okay, Rachel, I have seen the hand. I recognize the power of the raised hand.
I would say the biggest thing for me, as Elise mentioned earlier, was the lack of combat. Because I didn't really know the rules before I chose, and I chose a combat class because I was like, this class, I never play real intense combat characters. Like, this is cool. They're cannibal. I'm gonna fuck shit up. And then it was just like, oh, that's not how this game works. And so like, I got all of the like special advances and stuff. I was like, yeah, rip and tear and all these things that were like, oh, if you take blood and it's crazy. And then it was like, oh, nope, not those are just not necessary, which was fine. Like, I'm not saying I didn't like it. I was just like so excited for the intensity of combat, and then it was just like not there. So I had to kind of shift my perspective on Barnabas and how he was. And like, you know, when I first started him, he was very kind of bloodthirsty crazy. And then he kind of shifted into grandpa bloodthirsty crazy, you know, where it was like he, you know, he had a little bit more of a character and an interactiveness with people, and it wasn't just like, I'm gonna eat a bitch. So that was a big difference for me.
I was
Yeah,
genuinely
like,
waiting to see if you were going to pick Grandpa Crazy or Grandpa Bloodthirsty, but you chose both. Sorry, Sam, what were you going to say?
That's a good combo.
definitely kind of related to that. I think mechanically one of the like biggest cruxes as far as like what in my head makes Spire is the advance system. Because, you know, normally when characters and tabletops level up, you know, yes, a lot of the times, you know, what ends up happening is you get to pick cool moves that aid you in combat. Whereas in Spire, the cool moves that you get further the plot. And it's more like, what cool thing can I do in this situation that isn't always combat? Like, you know, man with a gun, which was one of the most like iconic moments in my head of Spire. It's like, oh yeah, just suddenly a person wielding a firearm jumps into the room. No one knows how this is gonna like pan out. You know, and there are
times.
Yeah. There are, of course, you know, actual, you know, combat advances you could take, but so many of them were more, you know, centered on advancing plot, you know, helping characters out, stuff like that. So that was pretty huge for me.
Almost all of my advances were solely combat based. There was like maybe 2 Cannibal Priest advances that were not combat based. So I was like, just gonna go for it. Eventually it'll pan out, and it did.
Eventually I will need to cut and eat a bitch.
I was going to say, I imagine Andrew might have had a similar experience with the combat class.
I mean, I also had a lot of good ones that weren't, but one thing
Your
that
flask was good.
The flask was amazing.
Did you
I don't remember what inspired me to take that, but it was great.
Did you have the like insert yourself into a scene that was that?
I think Minrai and I both had a version of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But along with the advances, one thing that was really interesting was that break this game had between like scene and session and interaction or whatever it was.
Situation, yeah.
It was a really interesting way to refresh abilities where you're not pulling from a pool for all of these. They all have their own individual cooldowns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
And it's so interesting to see that happen when our games were like Tuesdays lasting 6 sessions. So like, you know, we saw it at the end of near the finale. I think it was Ava's or Rick's ability that it's like, oh, I cast it right at the end of the last session, but it expires at the end of the session. That was that's right. It was yours. Yeah. And so that's like such an interesting, like, you know, especially as a GM, and because part of the reason that this is like so interesting is because there's not a rule in the book about that, right? Like there is no official ruling in the book about what counts as a situation, what counts as a scene, what you're supposed to do about like, you know, if certain things look like they're, you know, more likely supposed to be like once a day, but they call it once a session. And like, you know, like, so those are the kinds of things where I just had to be like, yeah, I guess, I mean, like, do it. What? Like, I'm just kind of playing like, yeah, go, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
And from my perspective, like I've only ever played, I learned how to play D&D on 4th edition, which I know a lot of people are like, blah. And I played some 5th edition. So like both of those are a lot more combat based. And so moving away from that and getting a chance to kind of really dive into the role play aspect and getting a chance to, it was the first time I'd ever done a voice for a character. And I really liked the skill and the, what is it, Dominion or what, domain, right? Is that what it was?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like the skill and domain system because it just felt like everything that my character was getting was built to help her like come together more fully as a character. And to me, that's like an impressive thing for a system to do, because in D&D, I can have the same abilities as somebody who's completely different than me. But in Spire, if I have the same skills and domains and abilities as another character, chances are we're going to be pretty similar. Maybe different in, personality, but like it will definitely like play into some of that. So to me, that was like really neat to see and fun to play with.
I would also just want to jump in and say, kind of related to what Elise was mentioning earlier, compared to D&D, like I found that this system maybe it was just the kind of plot thread that, this all started on, but it felt that Spire as a system is a lot more conducive to splitting the party because it's not so combat centric.
Yeah.
And yeah, it felt like we weren't getting punished for doing that.
Yeah, you finish.
I was just going to say, like, and having a background in D&D and, other tabletop RPGs where that is the kind of logos of, no, don't split the party. To have to kind of back away from that and realize, oh, hey, we did this thing and it turned out for the better. Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that I never wanted you guys to feel punished for splitting the party, but it was an adjustment for me as well to start realizing, like, oh, this is just how this is going to be, isn't it? Like this, we're just going to have a split group all the time, and knowing that that's something I had to prepare for, and that honestly, like one of the biggest concerns for me as a GM about that was like, man, people are going to be sitting here for like 45 minutes with nothing to do. Right. And like, that kind of sucks from I'm trying to, like, I'm engaged 100% of the time, but I know that for y'all, it's like you get 20 minutes on and then 40 minutes off and then maybe 15 minutes on and then, and then it's break. And like, that's like that system. Like, I didn't like how that started to feel like I had to be like managing everybody being engaged in terms of giving you a chance to engage. And that was the hardest thing, I think, more so even than like feeling like, because y'all got a lot done with a split party, right? But with a roleplay heavy split, scenes could take 30 minutes that I was hoping would take 10, right? Yeah. And like that meant that like some people just sat through an hour waiting for their turn to do something. And like, that was, I think, one of the hardest things to like kind of learn my lesson around, like, what do I do to like, and so finding something in this system, like this is something I've been thinking about in terms of like an arc 2 or whatever, is like finding a way to motivate people to stay together as a party without necessarily it having to be combat. Right. Because that would be, I think, a good thing to figure out, just in terms of like, what is the other party motivation for sticking together, if not like to have everyone's abilities on hand ready to survive a combat. So
an incentive as opposed to punishment, and that's one of the things that, we've been discussing the combat system and everyone here has been bouncing that around, but that's also, I would say, one of the ethoses of don't split the party that as a DM in D&D, I'm always a little bit uncomfortable with, of this, oh, they've split it, punish them. I'm like, no, I'd just way rather there's more you can accomplish together. And like, and I feel like with like the Marauders, you all generally play off really well. And like, sometimes we did have a couple of splits, but like, yeah, we're going to balance out these two characters because we probably don't want to just have, Nero go wander around the town by himself. He will not come back for 3 days. And that was the other thing that I was going to say, is I thought it was really interesting with the session and scene based, like just as an outside person who plays games and runs games, that was really cool. And I also thought that was interesting for how it affected that, like, the month of Tuesdays we keep referencing. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, you all would have been dead in D&D because none of you have slept.
Yeah, you haven't slept, but you can just refresh those abilities. Yeah.
God, how many levels of exhaustion would Kelby have from Thursday to Friday? Like that, seriously, like that's and like I've played a lot of 3.5 D&D, 5e, and a lot of Call of Cthulhu. Spire actually gives me a lot more Cthulhu vibes than D&D, because you have this this kind of insurmountable, elsewhere you are the kind of dust, and the universe is so much larger than you. In reading the kind of flavor text, kind of getting us into Spire, it was that kind of feeling where we could all take combat classes, and I think we could have had more of a combat heavy campaign if we all said, okay, we're going to be a revolutionary group and we're going to burn it down. But I think I personally was coming into this having played a lot of combat in D&D, where literally everything you fight has an experience value. It's literally rewarding you for fighting. I came into this wanting to try and do the opposite, where I wanted to have not quite like a pacifist run, but like, how many of my problems can I solve without needing to go for the headshot every time? So yeah, it was a really interesting challenge, I think, that Spire ends up presenting, because even with the advances, no matter how powerful you are, you still, if you take 10 stress, you're dead.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
That right there, I mean, like, you really hit the nail on the head in terms of like, what is the key mechanic difference? You take 10 stress, you're dead is it, right? Because as a like, thinking about combat, when I planned combats for y'all, I'm thinking like, okay, if you do something and you roll a critical failure, you take double stress. So let's say I'd give you a D6 of stress, and we roll it and we double it, and you get a 5 or a 6, you are at the point where you must take severe fallout from your own weapon malfunctioning, right? Not even from the person who's attacking you shooting you with a gun, right? Because the most that a gun can do is probably D8 damage, and so it can only do 8 in a single shot. But you critical failing means double damage, and so it's like, thinking about combat, it's like, man, if you think about, even if you're taking less than that per hit, but you get in a fight with like 2 things, and each of them can do up to D6 damage on a turn, and they do 3, and then the next one does 4, and then you fail something, so you take 4 from your own failure because you take stress on failures, including fight failures, and then you're also at 10, right? And so there's just like, there's so many ways in a combat situation specifically to go from I'm perfectly healthy to I am dead. Which is, I think, intentional,
it's also kind
right?
of like more like a real life, where like, in D&D, it's like, oh, it's fine. No, you got shot 17 times. You're
exactly.
fine.
And that's
like,
that's very,
like, you got shot once, you're dead.
You're dead. Yes.
Yeah,
and that's
I was
designed,
thinking,
right? That's in the design of the game, and that's how it's narrated in the book, is like, would you solve all of your problems by shooting people in a city that you live in? Probably not. And like, so you shouldn't inspire solve all of your problems by shooting people.
Well, hey,
Just call
2020 is not
somebody
over.
else with a gun to come and shoot them for you.
Yeah.
yeah,
Summon a
I was
man with a
thinking,
gun.
I was thinking about this specific situation earlier today. With it was the name of the elf that Rick shot was Rochelle.
Yes.
Yeah. And how I burst into the door, one shot, and that character was just gone.
Yep.
Yeah, that was wild.
A super powerful character was just gone off the map in 1 second. And, whereas in D&D, combat is something that takes a lot of time. And in this system, it's like, oh, you are just one of another elves, right? So like, you have just as much power as everyone else, basically. And you all can die, because of one shot. So yeah,
Yep.
It's crazy.
Even like outside of combat, Kelvy could have died with
As
the
a
right conversion in the last session. Like,
There were so many places Kelvin could have died.
I was like sitting on a couch, immediately takes 6 stress. If I took another 4, I'm dead. And that's like, there's no combat there. I just have a brain aneurysm and die. Like,
Yeah. You just think so hard about not wanting to piss off Vis that you're dead now.
right.
Well, and I think that also, one of the things that was interesting, Sam, to your point, is that a lot of those advances, when you were doing level up or advanced sessions and talking about these abilities and going through them, that was one of the things that I also hit to that earlier point of, these were all things that served a story. You were getting, it wasn't even like, in my mind, it almost had this feeling of the characters didn't become more powerful in that D&D you go from, a champion among people to basically a demigod. This was like, no, you have more ways you can solve problems. You have more resources. You have more ways you can sort of influence a storyline, but you're a person. If someone shoots you in the head, you're done. You didn't get, there wasn't like my stress pool is now 375.
I'm a spider person. Thank you.
Spider, I'm sorry. If they, but still, headshots still a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting part of it as well. One question that I had, because I know that this was definitely brought up a lot in the beginning of the campaign. Like, I think in sort of Elise's opening statement to this campaign was, hey, we're all learning this. I'm learning this. They're learning this. We're going to be looking at this book a lot. We're going to be like, oh shit, what do I do here? How was that? Like, I know that for a lot of DMs and GMs, there can be this like sort of pressure and terror to know every ruling off of the top of your head perfectly and infallibly at all times. How does that, for you, Elise, learning it as you were running it? And how was that for the players, sort of learning it and knowing the GM is learning it as you were playing it?
I don't mind answering that from a player perspective if Elise wants some time to think. Yeah, I mean, as a player, I didn't have that much experience with D&D coming in. I've played in Andrew's group, Andrew, and I've played a little bit before, but Spire was something that was like completely new to me. But I think it's because combat isn't the focus of the system, that it allows for more of like a streamlined entrance into playing Spire, because you are just focused on like, this is my character and this is what we're doing, and if the rule doesn't, at least from a player perspective, I can just be like, ask the DM. But like, I think we touched on, or at least Elise mentioned it before, how it doesn't have answers for a lot of stuff, and that came up sometimes while we're playing, and to me that felt nice, because it's just one of those things that it's like you can home rule whatever seems to fit the moment, and so I didn't stress about, oh, I don't know the system, or I don't know the rules or whatever. I just picked it up and tried my best to focus on the story and the characters, right? So
to that point, it also, like, as a player, it never really felt like we were operating from like Elise having a deficit of information. Like, it felt like, she knew enough, we all kind of knew enough, and then when we had a problem, we just, would look it up or make it up.
I loved hearing about Spire from Elise, because it was obvious that you had read like a good chunk of the lore, at least from our end. That's what it seemed like. And so being like, well, what's this like giant mosquito thing? And then you'd be like, well, that's in like the shitty parts, or like these are the hanging gardens. And then it's like a tour, so it was pretty neat.
You actually like seemed to know a lot about Spire and the places and the things, where I could just be like, where would this happen? And you'd be like, it would happen here. And I would be like, how do you know that? But I will say that, I hadn't really played a whole lot of things like, I know D&D very well. I hadn't really played a whole lot of non-D&D games, but all of the non-D&D games I'd played were with Elise GMing them, because I played Honey Heist with her and Trashkin. So I'm used to Elise explaining rules to me that I don't understand. And
you say
so
Trashkin, I have to do it.
I don't have to do the little hands. Got little hands.
Andrew's least favorite thing.
You don't like my little
terrible
hands?
death. Well,
Andrew doesn't like me. I get it.
Logical jump of conclusion right there.
And now it comes out.
I knew it.
Andrew was waiting for his moment at the end of the
clear.
Yeah.
Just like saying Farquaad in the last
just
episode.
like Farquaad, which, by the way, I don't really remember what the
Wait,
what the
Farquaad
outcome
also
was
didn't
supposed
like
to
me?
be.
This is Rachel's takeaway.
The promise was that if I accidentally called him Farquaad, which I don't think I did because I was just laughing and saying it out loud. I didn't say, and then Farquaad, oh, I mean Faisal. I heard you say it and I was laughing and I went, Farquaad, right? Is that the same? I don't think so. We already said it was Chelsea's birthday present, so it's water under the bridge, but the outcome was that it would become canon that his name was Farquaad.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Which is perfect. For those who don't know, Farquaad is the villain from Shrek.
Oh,
Yeah. Hey, not everybody's seen Shrek. I'm just trying to be respectful about you. Wow.
From like Shrek 2 or something?
Shrek
It's not
1.
like-
definitely
Is it
Shrek
Shrek
1.
It's
Yeah.
Shrek 1.
Fuck, it's been a long time since I've seen goddamn
See,
Shrek.
Ava, I sit corrected. You did explain it to Rachel.
It's from Shrek. Fuck me. I swear I bothered talking. Andrew
Thank you,
doesn't like me.
Rachel.
So how
thinks I'm dumb.
So how does
Rachel, I
Shrek?
like you. You
But real questions: How does
validate
Shrek feel about
Ava.
Rachel? Does Shrek dislike
Shrek
Rachel?
wants me out of his goddamn swamp.
I think Shrek and Barnabas would get along very well.
What was the question, Goal?
They've both got many layers.
Something about the system.
Answering it,
Yeah.
I
I know.
was saying that I've played a lot of games with Elise where she's GM'd and had to tell me rules. So I felt pretty comfortable with that in the sense that, like, you know, I am very used to Elise telling me what to do. And I'm also like, I know Elise pretty well, and I'm also pretty comfortable and confident in her ability to know way too much about some things. Elise
Yeah.
goes like
I agree.
This is
hard
an Elise
into
call out post.
Elise goes hard into lore of things that she likes.
Yeah, Elise knows things.
Yeah. This is a thing I found. Like, Elise and I play Overwatch together. I'm like, I played the game, and Elise is like, here's the background of every character, and I'm like, how do you know this?
The background's the best part.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Andrew.
okay, well,
Thank you.
some of
No,
us
it is.
have other things that they like, Andrew. It's fine.
Well, I'm glad that you have a life, but I don't. So
Thank you. Valid.
I mean,
I
to be
will
fair,
say
most
that,
of my
like-
life is now spent role playing on fucking Helpful Ghosts, so you know.
I will say that, like, growing up with Elise as the best friend of my older sister, is basically like her younger sibling.
I've known this one since she was 2, just so everyone knows.
Yeah.
Cute baby, pinchable cheeks.
But yeah, I think it was easy, at least for me, to like trust that you knew what you were doing. I mean, you're a smart person, so
Also, Chelsea,
Well,
I think that Elisa's last comment needs to go on the quote wall. If you can.
What was I forgot.
that I have pinchable cheeks.
Yes, I've known this one since she was 2. Cute baby, pinchable cheeks.
Pinchable cheeks.
Elisa's
Great.
Yelp review of like Ava.
Ava? Yeah.
I wanted to say along those lines, it is true that when I decide I'm going to learn something, I learn it too much. And that was definitely like at the beginning of Spire stuff. It was a lot. It was a very deep dive into Spire. There are people locked out at my house, so allow me to go let them in.
Okay.
Okay, that was a hard segue that I wasn't fully prepared
like,
for.
that's a segue.
And that's my answer. Good day, sir.
I know, it's like, and that's what I think. Goodbye. Whoa, I was unprepared. Okay, so for anyone else, I was going to say, especially Andrew and Rachel is sort of referenced by at least there that both of you picked these sort of combat heavy classes, or maybe more combat focused classes. How was it sort of learning? Oh, maybe it's a little more role play system, and how do I funnel that?
I will say that it was interesting because, like I said, Cannibal Priest really didn't have a whole lot of like non-combat advances. It wasn't just that I like chose the combat ones. I would say like 85 to 90% of their advances are combat ones. So I didn't have as many cool things I could use outside of combat, because it was a lot of stuff that was like, if you do this, you take less damage. If you do this, you do more damage, like that kind of a thing, right? And like towards the end, I was able to figure out ways to use my combat ones for non-combat reasons, like when I drank Ulrich's blood and then was able to show up in his shadow. But I will say that this was an interesting one for me because I was super uninvolved with what was actually going on. Like, not only did like there was just no way for like my character to be like, I'm gonna be a part of the negotiations, you know, like Barnabas isn't going up to like, you know, Farquaad's estate and being like, listen here, you know, like that's just not, you know. And like before the whole campaign had started, I specifically had even chosen that Barnabas, like before he knew anything, that he didn't do endurance and that he spent all of his time in Derelictus. Like he avoided endurance and he just spent his time dedicated to them, to like helping them and doing things like that. So I was like super like, fuck Spire. And so then it was like, you're going to need to talk to a whole lot of people at Spire. I was like, nope. So it was interesting because I still felt like I got to have good character development and good conversations with everybody and all these things, but I was also just super uninvolved with the main plot. I was involved with a lot of the side plots, you know, like things with Neza and things with the cannibal priest and things with the Vis and all these things. But like the main plot, I was kind of just like, you guys got this, right? You know? And so I thought that was interesting because like I'm generally the kind of person that's like, hey, I'm in the middle doing everything, right? You know, so it was kind of it was a very interesting and different way to play for me.
I kind of felt similarly. I was involved in less subplots than you, but I always kind of approach character creation from like the backstory and who are they, and then how can I kind of reflect that with the mechanics of the game perspective. So I definitely did that with Hennis, and then kind of backed myself into a corner of he's very well built for fighting and being intimidating, but I have no desire to change that or to find different abilities because that's so much based in his character and who he is and what he's done. So I think if I could have done it again and I knew more about Spire, I might have kind of picked a different path for the character himself. But if I was handed Hennis again, I would pick the same things because that, despite the mechanics, was just how I wanted to play him. And I think, despite not being too involved in some of the main plots or the subplots, that it was exactly what he was built to be. And I had a lot of fun doing it, and also kind of finding what small things I could still put in, like advance-wise and things like that, that I could use more often, but still absolutely went with what I had already decided his characterization was going to be.
I will also say, from an outside observer, I have never seen DICE so thoroughly respect a characterization as you rolling any combat, like at least just like, fuck, you just snapped his neck. He's
we tell you,
It's just
fuck.
tell you what we tried to do.
Always critical successes.
We tried, fucking Andrew and I DMing at the last episode, and we were like, okay, if I need to roll, change your name to Barnabas and roll 20 and roll for me. And
So I did.
So we were like totally ready for it and all these things, but then I never had to roll. And I was so bummed. And then when we were doing our debrief thing, he just fucking decided, like we were just like post stream just debriefing, and he rolls and he gets a fucking 9. And I was like, and I just thought it said Barnabas 9, and I was like, son of a bitch.
like I think the one that I most remember for
Sorry,
that, as much
Elise,
as it
I
was
totally
very
interrupted.
consistent, was that one like the pit fight scene where you're like, yeah, and I guess I'm going out and I'm like doing my fight, and you're like, yeah, like, okay, well, let's see how this is going, roll a fight. And I think it was just like Elise's face just goes,
It was a critical success, followed by a critical success, followed by a double critical success. I was like, what the fuck?
I love
There's-
that fight with Amandu.
Yes.
It was like still
Oh
rolled
my
perfectly
God.
to character.
Oh my God.
The
It was so
mirrored,
good.
the
Yes.
mirrored moments. It was
Identical,
amazing.
identical rolls. Y'all rolled 10-9-9 or something like that. When I rolled that for Amandu, because I rolled first, and I was like, "Oh shit! Like this is oh no! Like Hennis is gonna get like stabbed or something." And then you were like, I get a 10-9-9." I was like, "What? You got a what?" That was so funny.
Awesome. Given that we're right around 8 o'clock Mountain, I think we'll take a quick break, like 5 minutes, step away, then get into some more questions that are sort of asking about favorite moments, experiences during playing it. So it's sort of also a good natural transition. Thank you so much, everybody. Hope you're enjoying watching it. We see you in chat. If you have any more questions, like I said, feel free to drop them in chat. And we're going to be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll keep going. See you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Hey everyone, we're back. Just in time for a good Rachel laugh, who's trying to deny that she ever laughed, but you heard it. You know. You know. We're here with the cast and crew of Spire, which recently finished its first Seasonarcchunk. That's a really hard set of words to portmanteau. So
don't.
No, don't tell me what to do.
Be obedient, Galway.
No, I learned from you.
That's Nero's trait.
It's fine. You can show some ankle sometimes, even if you.
Did Galway just give me I learned it from watching you line? Oh my god.
I'm so glad you caught it. All right. As we drop back into the questions, the first half we kind of covered some of the bigger things around the system of Spire, what people learned, how people went around that. And some of the questions that we had from the community were also much more focused around your own individual experiences and sort of how you felt about the game and the world and the story. So Chelsea in Discord asked, what were your initial reactions to the world of Spire? Like, as you were just reading about the materials that Elise was giving you, and like, in what ways did they change from playing the game, if they changed? I will call on someone.
Well, okay, so I can say one thing that I think everyone. Well, okay, so in the handbook it says like that the world is way more cutthroat than I made it. Let's be real. Like the handbook is like your neighbors will sell you out, right? And I was like at a certain point, partway through, like getting kind of like the feel for the apartment building, and especially because we were playing a eviction based campaign, right? This like, or the kind of seat of the campaign was the eviction notice. It felt so bad to take away like the idea of community as something that would be like more important to people than like, especially in Derelictus. Like I feel like if I had put you guys a little further up Spire, like we would have had a lot more of that. Like, don't let your neighbors even catch wind of this because they will sell you out. But in Derelictus, like who are they going to sell you out to? Like maybe the gangs, but the gangs don't care, right? Like it's just this very different place considering the complete lack of high elf attention down there. And so the handbook kind of saying like, listen, nobody, you can trust no one, even other ministers will like cut you loose, your neighbors, your family, like they will turn you in for a dime, right? Didn't feel good to do given our campaign setting and the kind of the impetus for action, being like a community being threatened with losing their homes. And so although there was certainly threat of y'all getting detected, right? And certain people would have sold you out, and like Amandu was like hot on your trail for a little while. But you know, there was also like less concern on my part of like making it that like highly suspicious, everybody's out to stab you in the back mentality. So
yeah, I'll say going into it, to me, like I read a little bit, not like into the backstory or like any of the characters and NPCs and stuff that were there, but like just that general like cutthroat kind of like someone will turn you in. And like I think Elise said it best. She was like, you're not gonna change a lot. Like you most likely you'll save your apartment and then you'll die. Like that's kind of like the scope of your characters, because you know you're supposed to be in this like fascist world where you really can't affect too much change without like putting yourself in the crosshairs. And so I approached it, I think, like from a very paranoid place of like, oh shit, like I at least me, and then like I guess it kind of infected Minrai as well, was just very like you cannot trust people. You can't make a scene. You can't like you have to go into this with like a plan and be like surgical with it. And I think that over time, I think I felt a little better being like loose about that, as I kind of realized that it was a little bit more easy to interpret with the Derelictus vibe.
I also
100%.
took a lot from those lines. I think Hennis was created very much from a perspective of not expecting things to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was different from when we started, because it did start much darker than it ended. I think that was my main difference from what I expected going in to what we ended up with at the end.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like going into that finale against Lord Farquaad, like there's I expected him to have like, you know, compared to our like 2 higher advancements that we had, I expected him to have like a whole arsenal of like higher advancements. So, you know, I thought, you know, we're gonna like swing at Lord Farquaad and then all of a sudden like one of our heads are gone, you know, like, or like the bullet is like now a puppet with its own gun or some like crazy Spire bullshit, you know. But you know, it was nice to see that fight kind of play out a little more chill, but I definitely like expected the finale to be like, y'all underestimated like the sheer resources that you know, a high elf has, whether that's like there's snipers that can like see through walls, or like he's got magic armor, or you know, whatever. I was like geared up for it. I was like, oh shit, we're like gonna die. And I mean, I like the ending a lot, so it was nice
He did have a lot of that kind of stuff, and I think a lot of our stuff kind of nullified it too. Like he was,
yeah, I mean,
he was at difficulty, and my thing is that I can lower difficulty, and that was just never a thing that came up because, like I said, we never fought people before. So I think there was a lot of, but I mean, you're right. I think, but also, you know, I think that Elise didn't want to make it all completely hopeless and then be like, and you did it all for nothing. Fuck you.
Yeah.
I was, maybe she did. I am not like you guys, and people who have played with me or run games with me before know that I do not read things to prepare ahead of time. Like I straight up played a game of something with Andy, and he gave me he gave me the rule set, and I was like, cool, I'll glance at it. You know, Elise always talks about ADHD brain. The way my ADHD brain works is I cannot just sit and read like a rule set and absorb it. I will read it and literally just be like, anything else. And so I do really well with figuring it out as I go. And I'm pretty good at like being quick on the uptake kind of a thing, but I didn't read fuck all. I didn't even fully read my goddamn character page. Like I was like, what are the advances? Those look kind of interesting. Okay, I'll take those ones. Like it's just to give you a glimpse into my mind and how well I prepare for things. But like, so I didn't really have a whole lot of expectations as to what it would be. And I think that I went into it thinking like, it's fine, I can change things and I'll be this, and no, like it was a lot more failure, I would say, than I was used to, partially because I also roll fucking terribly, which did work well for me in Night Hag when we needed to roll low, and never once failed to roll.
It is just a thing. It's somehow you have weighted virtual dice so that they only come up with ones. Because we did the one shot of Night Hag where you're always trying to roll under something. You literally never lost a die.
Never lost a die. The only die I lost was when I voluntarily gave to Tyler, where I was like, you're going to die. Here, take some of mine. But yeah, I never lost because I was just like, yeah, 1s and 2s, I got that shit. But like, I feel like in this game, it's hard to succeed unless you are really good at something. And the way that I chose to play Barnabas was not a way that he had skills in like, actual skill sets. So like I failed often, and I was just like, man, I suck at everything. It was just a huge like brain shift of like, you know, I'm going to try this, but it's probably going to fail, and that'll be okay.
I do remember your ongoing struggles with compel rolls. You're like, I'm a creepy ass old man with a giant war cleaver. I should be able to compel you to do something.
And the struggle to use your reputation, I think, was another one that like you got some like good gratification out of that, because at the end you kind of pulled it together on that, especially in that
struggled with his resist rolls.
Yeah.
A lot of you struggled with resist, but resist is a hard one because it doesn't. It doesn't have a domain.
I crit succeeded when I forgot to check for fucking vis.
That was so funny.
Yeah,
God, what a different world it would have been at the end there.
Imagine?
I mean, I wonder. I really.
Bug's Life. Like,
That's our next campaign. We're all
this. Yeah.
all this full party. This I'm here for it.
I'm here for this.
And there's like another type of like hive mind.
I think my biggest, I mean, it was kind of an anxiety going into this was, you know, my experience with Elise prior to Spire was her as Dee Dee in The Burbs, which was just phenomenal and beautiful and conniving and yes. But then more recently was Honey Heist, which is like all whimsy and fun and then to go from that and then to have to like kind of turn tail and do this like really dark noir you know, oppressive fascist, you know, system. And like I had anxieties about being a person within this world and, you know, approaching it with, you know, the right amount of like reverence and understanding of the world currently around me and, you know, all of these different oppressive structures in place and, you know, just wanting to be respectful of all of this stuff and also not knowing how the rest of the party was going to handle that. So that was kind of my biggest anxiety of like, what is the world of Spire actually going to be like for me? And what is it going to be like playing a person in this world with a bunch of other people that I don't really know yet? So that was really like a bit stressful for me, but then after like, you know, break in session 1, I was like, I've got this. This is great. Yeah.
You want some drugs?
Yeah.
Also, I imagine the feeling of being like, I mean, in terms of like who knew each other, I knew all of you, and some of you didn't even know me, right? Like, and so I would love to hear. And that wasn't a question that I really asked or told like Galway to like include. Sorry about TV noise. But I was just gonna say, like, I mean, like Tyler, like it must have been like super weird coming in and playing with a GM that you've like, you know, talked to once ever.
Yeah, and I mean, just in terms of like being on stream doing the tabletop, you know, stuff, I've never done anything like that except for, I guess it would have been what, Galway, about like maybe a month prior when I had done your one shot.
I think so. I think that about lines up.
Yeah, so other than that, you know, I mean, it's so odd because, you know, I'm coming from, you know, a theater background. I've done acting, I've done the art stuff, and, you know, and tabletop stuff has really, especially during the pandemic, like this, like the Spire has been a godsend for me because it allows me to get the creativity out. So once again, thank you, Elise. Thank you, Galway.
I'm so glad you joined the campaign. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Oh, yes.
So yeah, I just as a like early on in my like theater happenings, I knew that networking was going to be a thing. So like forcing myself to get out there and talk to people like was huge for me. And I'm an introvert. I am such an introvert. Yeah, it was same thing with this. I talked to Adam, and he was like, "Yeah, Elise is cool. You should do the campaign." I was like, "Yeah, cool. All right, that's all I needed." And here we are. So, yeah, no, I was super glad I said yes. This has been a fantastic journey. I thought this was going to be like another, you know, very kind of short, you know, 4-week, you know, kind of thing. But I'm so glad it turned into, you know, we're talking about, you know, arc 2 or season 2. Like that's fantastic. That, this, what should have been, a couple weeks story has now turned into this kind of like sprawling epic of Spire. I don't know.
I only knew Elise at the time. I met Ava once, awkwardly.
They were both dog sitting for me, and like Ava was leaving as Rachel arrived because someone is either early or late. And whatever.
I was late. I was late because I was staying with Rika. Like,
You were
which is
having
just-
fun with Rika.
Yes,
It's totally
and she's a very lovable dog, as we all
and
know.
like you told me, like, yeah, my friend Ava, is fairly new here, and she's gonna come and do this. And I was like, sure. And then she like walked in the door, and I was on the couch, and I was like, hey.
I didn't expect someone to be there. You were really nice, so it was not a
Well,
bad
that's
first
You
impression.
were really nice. Emphasis on the
Now Ava knows bad.
Now I know
All right,
who you
How many
really
people are cutting?
but-
How many people are cutting pies with Rachel tonight? Andrew, Ava.
Like always, like, actually, we need to talk, Rachel. Helpful Goat is going to.
You're being let go.
I don't even work here.
Being let go.
Congratulations, we have an offer of employment for you and a letter of termination.
But yeah, I didn't know Andrew or Tyler at all. Had no idea who they were.
I'm pretty sure we've played
Andrew.
Overwatch together.
Yeah, but I didn't associate that you were that same person. I didn't even associate that until like months into us playing. Straight up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, like, I think at some point I said to Elise, "Oh, that's the same Andrew." Like, it's just, and then like with Sam, I think that we had like started talking some and like played Fortnite some together, and that was it.
It was we played Jackbox games. That was like our first.
I was gonna say this predated you being on Fortnite, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right. Yes, we started playing Jackbox games, and then, because this started to happen around the same time that Amber Heart mystery happened too, right? Or was that after? My brain, everything is
Amber
terrible and
Heart
jumbly.
was.
Well, I think we were talking about starting both at the same time, but then Amber Heart happened later than Spire.
Amber Heart was
I will
after the start
say-
of Spire, but it was pretty soon after the start, and it was super quickly put together because Amber Heart came out of I think Fates of Rin couldn't play for some reason. So at the
Right.
last minute, I was like, "Hey, who wants to help me out and appear in a one shot? Please, God."
Yay. But yeah, and I was one of the things that I was so glad about was that we started using cameras because I didn't know anybody but Elise, and like so I knew Elise's voice and I could tell Ava's voice, but like, and I knew Sam somewhat, but I was just like, it's so hard to keep track of who was who and what's what, and like having to play, like I literally in my notes I wrote down the type of accent that you spoke with as your character, because I was just like, okay, this one has this kind of accent, and that was super helpful. Anyway, I rambled off of where the question actually was. Sorry.
No,
No,
that was.
I also I kept the Discord on the very edge of my screen so that I could see whose name was lighting up when they spoke, because I could not like voices like without faces, like it takes a long time to start like, oh, okay, like this voice is this person, right? And so I do that with Overwatch too. Like when we play, like I have to have the little thing where it's like telling me who's speaking. Even among our friends, I'm like,
I
who
was
said
like,
that?
they all sound so different.
Now they do. When we started, I was
now,
like,
fair. Right now, it's like, wait, which one's Tim and which one's Ryan? Yeah, sorry.
bless. Shout out to Tim and Ryan.
And Adam, because
And
Adam's the one that brought us
Yeah.
all together. So.
That's true. And does watch our Helpful Goat content. Anyway, we are so off track. Where are we?
Well, I'll say like in regards to just like, and I know this is still a little off track, but in regards to using the cameras and things like that, on a personal level, like it's helped me grow a lot, I think, because I am trans, so like I transitioned a year and like a half ago, basically. Like that's when I started my transition. So it was really nerve-wracking to get on camera and to think that, okay, well, people are gonna like see me, they're gonna be like judging my appearance, and to a certain extent it's like a like another like test or like going out in public kind of deal. So, and it's helped me become a lot more comfortable. Like I have to have visual meetings every day at work now. And I think that like just off the chance of just like what Spire has been, I think I'm able to do that a large part because I got comfortable doing it here first. So, yeah, just thank you everybody for being like really comfortable. And I was terrified of the camera at first, and now I'm just a lot more comfortable here. So yeah.
Well, thank you for being willing to give it a shot with us, and I'm so proud of you for just like doing it and trying it and being such a shining light in our campaign, Ava.
Oh, yeah.
Abso-freaking-lutely. And and on that note, like also having cameras has just kind of like made this a lot more personal, and it feels good. It feels good.
Yeah, I'd also like to.
agree.
It's interesting. This actually dovetailed with a question that we had sort of at the last minute from Lena of like, how did you all feel that streaming this as opposed to like maybe playing it tabletop or just playing it even online, but not for stream did? And so I think Ava, you just spoke to that kind of super beautifully of like, yeah, that's an impact of that. And I also want to say on a sort of helpful goat on a personal level, thank you so much, Elise, for figuring out your arrangement of cams, because when you did that, I'm like, oh, holy shit, I could do that too. And now it's way easier and I don't have to worry about when people drop in and out. Oh my God, don't know why I didn't think of this.
I'm glad it worked out. It was just kind of a like, where can I put these image up?
Can I
we'll
do
just do
it
here.
I can do
Yeah.
this.
And it worked.
Yeah, worked beautifully. It's also so strange to me because it's the, like, when we talk about this and we talk about like, the month of Tuesdays, and it also is one of those COVID time effects. I'm like, shit, this wasn't that long ago, actually. Like trying to put together the timeline of, like Tyler Raging Storm into then this into Amberheart into, I'm like, God, it hasn't actually been that long. Yeah, so one question that Lena had asked also in the Discord of like, what was the hardest part of the season to play through? And I think there in the sense of like emotional impact or just sort of that feeling of this was a pretty big daunting world. Like I appreciate at least being like, yeah, I eased off some of the like everyone will fucking stab you and take a kidney, but this was still not. This was an oppressive world. It was a, totalitarian, fascist, and oppressive system in a lot of ways. So I think that is a sort of very interesting. What did you find like rough for your character? I mean, I kind of feel like if we did this on a timeline, I'm just picturing Tyler as Kelvy circling whole thing right there.
Definitely when they shot Neza, I know, I'm sure you'd want to talk about that some, but that was like,
it was hard because I mean, at least for me, I know at least you were Neza, but like for me, I feel like my initial meeting with them was this like super not liking them and turned off by them and like and then as my character started to shift and learning more about them, it was very much like, oh no, protect, take care of, help, like it just became this super like I want to do whatever I can to help the fuck out of Neza, and then it was just straight up boom, Neza's dead, and it was just like so like and the reasoning behind it was totally accurate and correct, like of course they would be killed, but I feel like for Barnabas, Neza was the first time for me realizing that about Barnabas's like soft caring side, right? And also just like wanting to protect people. And I put a lot into that. And then it was just like that, I think too, was just a showing of like how he was feeling for Kelvy and like wanting to, like Kelvy is his like actual friend that he lives with and works with and all of these things. And like seeing what's happening to Neza is like, oh, fuck. Like I need to care for this person because that way then I can care for this person that I really care about. And just, having them be, fully just, myrtleated was tough.
Yeah.
I mean, Neza was definitely a very different character at the beginning of the story, right? Like their first interaction was that interaction in the basement, where they were demanding to be let into Marguerite's apartment to do an inspection, and they were very much in control of their mental faculties and everything else, right? And we saw Neza spiral very fast. Like if we keep in mind this is a 6 to 7 day time period, right? Like Neza's spiral happened rapidly, and it was helped along, right? It was helped along by getting shot, by the stress of the situation. I mean, like this is something that I was thinking about a lot. Was I was like, I mean, how do we narratively justify Tyler's character Kelvy like having? Because in theory, this thing should take months or years to infect someone at this rate. But because we're playing 6 days across 8 months, we suddenly have this problem of like every 2 sessions, every 3 sessions, we're getting a thing. And that is like that's twice on a Tuesday, right? That Tyler becomes more bug or Kelvy becomes more bug. And so I was like, I mean, realistically, like not everyone who's infected by this will be affected that way, but the higher stress situations you're put in, I think the more likely the advancement of this, of the infection would become. And so that kind of played into my decisions on how like, how Neza kind of unfurled, and ultimately, became, from Marilee's perspective, right, who wasn't unfurling. She very much was in control of her stress and like the dealing with like her own infection, right? And not that you can like control it that much, but anyway, it was just part of the decision making there. And it was like I thought about it a lot because I'm like, can I really justify like a character changing this much in 5 days, right? And I was like, yeah, I mean, look at the players. Like the player characters are changing so much across 5 days. Why can't an NPC change that much across 5 days or 6 days? And that's really kind of one of the driving points. But it was very hard to sit on that because I was sitting on it. I can't meta talk that stuff with y'all so much because, of course, it tips my hand as a GM. And so it was very interesting to kind of be sitting on like knowing like there were a lot of things in my notes about what Neza would or wouldn't do. And ultimately, most of them didn't happen because the option didn't become relevant, but ultimately, forced their hand into certain things that Marilee decided was time to take it out, or take out the problem, right? So
I mean, yeah, with Neza, it was so interesting the way that played out, because with Kelvy going into the campaign at large, he viewed every relationship as a tool to further the group along. So if you remember that guard ran that Kelvy kind of saved, and what like that was going to be a tool in the toolbox later. We didn't end up needing him, but Neza, same thing. They were, just another, I think this is a chip we can cash in later. So it was really interesting as the campaign progressed and as Kelvy's infection progressed, and then seeing Neza again, knowing the trauma that Kelvy put them through, and then having this connection that he doesn't have with his core group that he can share with Neza. And yeah, like of all the things that, God hit Kelvy over the head with in this campaign, Neza's death hit so hard. Because going back to the tool thing, like, if a tool breaks, you move on and you get a new one. I asked immediately if I could try to jump in front of the bullet, because that's how attached I had grown to Neza. So yeah, good job, Elise. You hurt me real bad.
Good job, Elise. Oh my gosh. Look at our poor little baby over here. And you hurt him. Monster.
It's a good cry, I swear.
Honestly, the harder scene for me to play, it was hard for me to play that scene with Marilee and Neza, but I knew it was coming in a way that I had planned for it and prepped myself for it. Like, I knew Marilee was going to kill Neza that day if Neza showed up. I was not ready for Marguerite and Minrai's conversation at the end of Spire. It was hard. I had to sit there and like be like, what would Marguerite do? Don't act how Elise would act how Marguerite would act. Because like I wanted to be like, oh, I love you, baby. Right? Like I was like, no. This is not your little sister. This is Marguerite talking to Minrai. Like calm yourself. And yeah.
I saw that one coming as like a hard conversation. And I did cry afterwards, so you made me cry.
Sorry.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, that was really hard for me. Also, like learning about Amandu is really hard for me too. Like, I think that you navigated those waters like very tactfully, and you know, I appreciate kind of, you know, I know like you talked a little bit about, you know, how before like Spire has like a lot of the main quests are like very in depth into very like difficult topics for a lot of people. So I think you handled that well enough that it was impactful, at least, without being like devastating, in a real life way. So yeah, that was a tough one.
I think for me, one of the hardest moments was the climax for Rick. And we talked about this at length in our kind of debriefing after the fact, but you know, when Rick died the first time, like I had in my head, you know, the moment that Lekole, you know, gave me this offer to bring me back to life. I had in my head like on loop Harvey Dent's quote from The Dark Knight: "You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain." And I'm like, you know, maybe the right thing in Rick's head right now would be for me to reject the offer, but then like giving it more thought, like it was a bit of a split-second decision, but I had kind of solidified in my head that, you know, his entire life he'd been devoted to, you know, to the god of the moon, which he knows is this unit called Demno, but he had been completely rejecting one side of it, and it was that side that was willing to extend this olive branch, although it wasn't exactly a peaceful olive branch.
It was on fire.
Yeah, it was on fire.
This Molotov cocktail.
yeah, for sure.
Those grow on trees, right?
It was a Molotov branch.
Yeah, it's a Molotov branch.
Yeah. Yeah, so that having that moment was really, really hard, but I also think that Elise and I did like a pretty damn good job of making it happen. Even if it ended up resulting in a complete change of heart for Rick. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, that was a really interesting, like, that was something to like do off the cuff, was like, right. But I loved that scene. And I thought, I loved like watching, because I didn't know what you would pick, right? Like, and what would happen if Rick said no. Like, we would just have to go back to the next scene with them, with like your friends, just like, and your body, you know. And that was a really interesting like thing to kind of like sit there and like look at this and be like, man, like this is a tough choice for Rick. But I think, you know, one thing that in the debrief, you know, that we never talked about, but from like a GM machination side of things, is like, you know, Rick's questions to Lekole about, you know, is this something that Limier would want for me? Or I don't remember how you phrased it. You phrased it much better than that. But, you know, and like her answer about like it's three parts of the same thing, right? That like ultimately it's one deity but three faces was, I mean, a bit of a misdirect from Lekale. Like, not that it's a complete lie, but that like these, you know, these deities are more separate now than they've ever been, and that from Lekale's perspective, like that was the best way to get you to say yes, and that's what she was concerned with, far more than telling you the truth or giving you any sort of comfort in that moment. And it was an interesting thing to like play that and know that I couldn't tell you that because I didn't want it to like ever color Rick's anything. But I'm glad, I mean, like, and I hope it doesn't like hurt Sam in the retrospective, like my GM lied to me.
No,
like,
no. Like in my head, like I was looking at it as the analogy of the Holy Trinity, like, and thinking about it that way, and how like in Christianity, for example, like you have to worship all three parts.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, and I think that like the book that Rick read, like without that book, I think it would have been a totally different situation. And like that was never the intent of giving Rick that book. Was never for you to come out of it like, you know, dying and being resurrected by Lekale as like her, you know, her hit person, which was just such an interesting outcome, right? Because like the book, like really there was a lot that, you know, you could have pursued with Hallow D that you just didn't pursue, which is okay. Like you were kind of thinking maybe I'll come back to that later, and like that I was like, great, you know, that's your choice, right? And ultimately like you having read that was what opened the door for, I think, Rick to say yes to Lekale, and for me to be able to say like, you have this knowledge of like this three-part god or deity that you know, that Lekale was able to kind of play off of to convince you. And I mean, it's not a total lie. It's just kind of a misdirection from the fact that like, ultimately, I think Limier wouldn't have wanted Rick to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an interesting thought.
I think we hit everyone.
Did Andrew get a chance to, was there anything you wanted to?
What was the question? The hardest part for each of us?
Yeah, sort of the hardest part to play through. Most impactful.
I think for me it was less played out on screen, which is unfortunate because a lot of Hennis's interactions were less played out. But the thing that definitely stuck out to me the most in that, like I thought about the most, was the conversation that I had with Minrai one time, just going up Spire, and I said that thing about how it's not that I'm only the best fighter, it's that I'm only a good fighter or something. And it didn't seem that impactful in the moment, but that stuck with me for like 3 weeks as defining his character from then on. And it was not a happy defining moment. So I think that would be what I would have to put there.
Yeah.
Just like Hennis's feeling of being stuck in that life of like, this is all that I do, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hurt people real good, and that's about it.
And that's why people like
you
me.
Absolutely do.
You do. Yeah.
As
you
tragic
fit in
as that
Mortal
is,
Kombat.
you just need to
about
like
this
say
time,
again,
kind of
yes, you sure do hurt people real good.
And kind of as the counterpoint to this one, Chelsea asked the sort of the summative season of one of our helpful goat traditions of after each session asking, you know, what was something you were proud of for everybody, not just the players, but also the GM. What was your sort of proudest moment during the season? Stuck out to you?
Me, I'll go first. I talked a little bit about it in chat, and we did mention like Minrai's conversation with Marguerite. I think, you know, like really, this is the first time that I've dove like headfirst into trying really hard to create like a character with a good arc, and like really dive into like the role play aspect more than like the mechanics, which I think Spire just helped me get my head around that a little better as a player. And for me, like, I think that conversation was like the perfect cap on Minrai as a whole, because she started out very naive. She was like, I want to be a midwife and help save all the drow and fix all these problems and things like that. And then as things kind of progressed, she, like at the very end in the last fight, like one of the things that I made sure is that like when Rick died, I like looked at him and then Minrai was just like, yeah, he's dead, cool. And then he came back to life and Minrai was like, cool, he's alive. Like she very much like had an arc where she kind of lost her like innocence as far as how she was raised, and then kind of had to reconcile both having that like thirst for vengeance and the need to be like a revolutionary that brings about change, and also that like mother-like figure, because you can't be a guiding, kind mother figure who is also a ruthless revolutionary who's trying to overthrow like a complete fascist, dominion. Like you can't do both, because you have to be so far into both worlds, right? So to me, that conversation, even though it like hurt so much, it was at least my proudest moment, because it like really crystallized her development as a character, which was something I was really looking into. Yeah.
As someone from the outside, if this was your first attempt at trying to build a character with an arc, you're much, much better at it than a lot of people who have tried to do it for a long time. That was beautifully done character work throughout. So,
well, thank you. I give 60% of the credit to Elise.
I give back about 55% of that.
Can I ask you a question, Minrai? Ava, Minrai? I'm asking the question about Minrai. So yeah. At what point did you kind of have it in your mind that these were two diverging paths?
Yeah. I think it was. There was a very specific moment. I think it was when I talked with Mama Luke's, and I had that conversation about how, like, she's a guardian, kind of. And, I didn't say much about it in character at the time, but I think that stuck with me as kind of the antithesis of what we're trying to do in that moment, which was, regardless of whether we had to kill drow guards, right? Whether I had to make someone shit themselves to death, or if I had to go and kill like someone who's just during their durance, right? I was going to protect and establish this apartment as safe and make a change, right? And at that point, I think, as somebody who was playing Minrai, I kind of saw that split of, you're saying that like you're a mother to or your mother as well to Mama Luke's, but at the same time, like, what is Minrai doing that echoes that mother role, and what is she doing that is completely opposite of it? Because that's kind of when Marguerite said, yeah, we'll kill drow, like at that, or Minrai said, yeah, I'll kill drow, like at that point forward, it was fair game for her. So I think that's kind of where that character split, at least for me. It's really cold.
You can nominate the next person to give their proudest moment.
Oh, okay. I nominate Elise.
It's me. I don't know. That's tough. I have always said that like one of my favorite things is when like the clues start to add up for players and they start to click things together. And so there's multiple points where I can remember that happening along the way, of like just things kind of snapping in place and like seeing people's faces. I think did we send it to I think it's only in the Spire Discord that Sarah got that screen cap last of everybody. Did we send this to anywhere in Helpful Goat?
No.
But this is the screen cap of like everyone realizing that like Kelby had been I'll send it in the Discord so people can see it. But everyone had been, I think Kelvy had been converted to Lekole rather than to Limye or Lombre, the other one, the third one. And I just love those kinds of moments of like seeing people like kind of click together things. Oh, Sarah is here. Hello. Hi, Sarah.
Hi,
Love
Sarah.
you. Oh my God. I miss you. Come back. I'm sending it in Helpful Goat general chat so you guys can check it out. Okay. And so anyway, yeah, those are always the moments that I love most as a GM. So they feel like proud moments to me, even though I can't necessarily like say exactly when they happened at this point, because it's like seeing my work pay off, right? It's seeing like all those little bits and pieces that players are only seeing here and there snippets of, and there's more behind the scenes, finally starting to weave together into the tapestry that I've always been able to see, but players are only like grasping at the pieces of. And I always think it's very funny too, like how like in the first episode, I hate that session. In the first session, I gave y'all the eviction notice, right? And the eviction notice was something you had in your journals, and it's signed by a person. Nobody ever thought to go talk to that person to find out where she worked, who she was, why she was in charge of making an eviction notice, why she got to kick you out of your homes. So I was like, you guys were like, okay, so here are our potential leads, and you're like listing things, and you listed like 2 things I never thought of and never brought that woman up again. And I was like, she's gone. She's not in the campaign.
Yeah, you're
so
right.
funny.
Adelise Verne.
Mm-hmm. Adelise Verne.
Who was she?
She's
though?
dead to us.
Yeah.
She's
You'll
gone.
never know.
You wrote her out of existence.
Well, that just goes to show you.
She was one of the people that was killed when Farquaad went on his rampage.
Guys know how to walk through the park. Yep.
I will nominate the next person. I nominate Sam.
Okay. All right. Here goes. So my proudest moment was easily, I think it was like about at the midpoint of Spire when I took Amandu up to, we went to a bar and I was doing some reconnaissance and I met with Mr. Inglori and then came back and then Amandu wasn't there. Amandu wasn't there at the bar and I had lost him. And then by sheer luck of where I happened to be, right place at the right time, I was able to intercept him before he did something he would have regretted maybe if he had lived to regret it.
And sobered up.
Yeah. And, you know, being in the right place at the right time was awesome. And then the cherry on the top was being able to have the conversation with him afterwards, where, for one, I got to drag Sam Malone to dancing with their own line about having a dumb name, which was great. And, you know, I got to have that kind of, you know, father son or gay uncle to gay nephew moment where, you know, we like came to terms on stuff, and I, you know, really brought Amandu into our fold in that moment, I think.
Yeah, that was such a pivotal thing. I mean, so many things hinged on what happened in that scene. So that was incredible. Yeah.
And then you get to nominate someone, Sam.
I nominate Tyler.
Oh, great. Oh man. There's a lot of moments for me, but I think it's more of a, I guess, an arc, we can say, is the birth of Orin Wade's in Moonlight. I think that was a really fun, I say fun, what I mean is terrifying gamble. And really had no idea when we first walked in to Faisal's estate if we were just going to get shot on sight or if it was going to go, relatively okay. And then we just ran with that. So yeah, definitely Mr. Moonlight for me. And then of course all that happened after, I guess, as a result, until Moonlight died.
Yeah, Moonlight. Some poor chump you summoned via magic.
Man with a gun strikes again. It's fine. Full circle. I'm gonna go ahead and nominate Andrew.
Then I'm gonna have to talk about the letter that I wrote to Amandu at the very end. I thought they had a really beautiful, opposite arc going the entire time, as Hennis was kind of slowly starting to pull away from that whole life fighting for people up Spire, and Amandu was slowly getting pulled back into it. And I was really happy with how I finished that up and wrote that last part. And I really enjoyed having that to play off of from the GM, sorry, because there was a lot going on between all the players, and we had a lot of really fun dynamics. But we also all came from wildly different characters. And I think that we had a lot to tie us together in the plot and ourselves and the other characters. And so I think it's fitting that the moment that I'm most proud of was kind of tying some of us together even further. So I guess it's Rachel's turn here. It's come to you. There's no one else to throw it to.
Wow.
Your fate has arrived.
What was your favorite moment?
The Andrew disliking Rachel comes out again. I guess you can give it to anybody else, so this bitch over here.
I don't know, Galway, what was your proudest character moment during the season?
I know that Andrew's trying to pass off because he's shy, but I really liked the Amandu and Hennis parallels as well. That was really fun to watch. So
yes, just as a meta moment of Tyler. I keep calling Kelvy Tyler. It has never happened before.
Tyler Bugman?
No, God damn it. You know what I mean, okay? Kelvy had this narrative foil with Neza, right? Mm-hmm. And it weirdly turned out that Amandu, I don't think it never was necessarily my intention, although it became very clear quickly based on once I kind of pieced it together in my head, I was like, well, duh. That in some ways Hennis and Amandu would be narrative foils to each other too. Even though in a large part, Amandu's relationship to Rick was closer in a gay uncle, gay nephew way. I think his attachment to Hennis meant something equally important to him as his attachment to Rick, and that was something I didn't expect when I was kind of wrapping my head around that character. But I really, really liked the way that by the end of the arc, Hennis and Amandu had become narrative foils just as clearly as kind of Kelvy and Neza had. So that was really cool.
And if I can take us off track just real quick.
No for Rachel.
Rachel, would you like your turn? We would love to hear from you.
We want you to take us off track first. No, God, get it out.
Yeah, go ahead, Edge.
Please take it off track, and then we can come back to Rachel.
Yeah.
All right. Right. One thing that I liked about Spire was that Amandu was one of my NPC bonds that you come up with before you start the game. And it was really nice to already have connections to a player character and someone in the world before you start. And I don't think that without that, any of this kind of narrative foiling would have happened, because I wouldn't have known kind of how to set this up or who to pay attention to. So as much as I really appreciated that moment, I think the game did a good job of setting that up, and I wanted to shout that out to the game.
Agreed.
Rachel, we would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you.
I wasn't sure if Andrew was going to do repair work or double down and now we settle for hearing from Rachel.
I don't know if that sounds genuine, Andrew.
Me? Not genuine? Who plays role-playing games?
It's more likely than you think. Mixing our memes. All right,
Okay,
let's do it.
Every time you say that, it makes me think of the centipedes centipedes in my vagina? It's more likely than you think. Oh,
I'm uncomfortable with
I'm
the
very
whatever
familiar
that
with
we've
the meme.
established in the studio
that's
today.
just my favorite thing. And that's from like back
It's her
in the
favorite
day.
thing. Well,
Centipedes in my vagina. No,
we're learning so much. Rachel, please.
Sarah knows that one.
I see that.
Person.
For the love of God, before we dig this pit any deeper, from which no narrative thread may escape.
Okay, so I don't really know that like Barnabas had any real like big singular moments, I guess I would say. I feel like for him, I feel like it was a lot of little moments stacked up to kind of create like how his character was changing and growing and the things he cared about. And I kind of liked just that I liked that at least I got the feeling that everybody knew that like Barnabas legitimately cared about everyone and wanted everyone to be like happy and healthy and safe all the time, but would also like fuck up anybody who was terrible and working with the high elves, like had no qualms about it at all, kind of a thing. Like, Minrai and I straight up chased down a guard and took off his hand.
Yes, you did.
I liked the way that I liked the way that he kind of slowly built this, like I mentioned before, like the caring for Neza and things like that. But I liked that it was built in enough that in one of the final episodes, when Kelvy was doing everything possible to ruin our reputation and make everybody hate us, and I went in there and just tried to fix it and just failed so hard all the time. I really liked that I felt like at that moment throughout our campaign, I had earned just turning to Kelvy and telling him to shut up and do what I say. Like it was such a great moment of just like super intense, like I am usually nice to you, shut your goddamn mouth. And he was just like, And I really liked, like, I felt like it was something that like Barnabas had earned, that he had like earned this, like, listen to me, god damn it, kind of a thing. And I really enjoyed getting there. And just also on the combat sense, I really was proud of when we were in the final battle and they straight up almost killed Sweet Pea, and that I just went fucking berserk and straight up ate that dude in front of his friends. It was just like, don't step. And it was just really great.
Crazy that Sweet Pea doesn't have stats. I was like looking her up like in the carrion priest thing, and I was like,
she's just
of course the hyena is sometimes going to take a hit. Like, why didn't they like?
I mean, there was a block that said that hyenas are immortal in Spire, so that's probably why. No, there wasn't.
All of us just fully stopped.
It was so believable. I mean, there's goats that use tools,
Right?
So why wouldn't hyenas be immortal? I was fully on board, Tyler. I was 100% in.
It was the fact that like the middle row's eyes were all like opening like a goddamn progress bar as everyone's just like, That just had to like wait, pause, maximum, another beat. No, I'm kidding.
So I wanted to just throw in there, based on what Rachel was saying, that one, I think like all of my favorite non-combat Barnabas moments were Barnabas Minrai debacles, just always awesome.
I loved their relationship so much, and I love that they still then went and actually like accomplished things in the end.
Yeah.
Right.
But my favorite combat moment was right before the moment that you said, when Ulrich bursts in, shoots and one-shots Rochelle, and then you appear from my shadow as like my stand with Sweet Pea. And Sweet Pea wasn't there yet. But yeah, and it was just, and you're menacing, and I'm like, oh my god, this is exactly what I need for this intimidation right now.
I fucking love that advance so much, and I wish I could have used it more. Just the like, boom, I'm here. Like I just.
Old Cannibal Man says hello. All right, well, given that we're at 910 Mountain, and also it feels very fitting to have closed a season recap with what people were all proud of, and also feels very appropriate to close the episode as we opened it with everyone nominating someone to go next. I think we will go ahead and wrap that up, but I do want to hit just one more super brief question that was dropped in the Discord from Chelsea. What sound does a sky whale make? Elise, please demonstrate.
They are mute.
Oh, damn it.
And with that...
I just like...
And with that, I think that will do it for us here tonight. I would like to thank the cast of Spire for joining us and talking to us about the wonderful Seasonarcchunk that we have been experiencing over the last few months, as well as thanking them for the wonderful stories that you told. I loved getting to watch it. I loved getting to laugh. I loved the fact that of the custom emotes in our Discord, I think like half of them are Spire references, like pretty legitimately. And I still have a backlog of a couple more that I'm supposed to make. Thank you so much for being here. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for coming, watching, posting questions. And I also wanted to thank everybody who is on here, like especially Ava, I saw you a couple times sort of expanding on questions in the chat. Thank you so much. I love getting to do these. I love getting to chat with people about games. Everyone is super welcome to come back for any future Goat's Eye views. If you'd be interested, let me know. And I hope that we will see more Spire soon and see more of all of you, your incredible talents to bring stories to life. For all of us here on Helpful Goat, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Take care of each other. Oh, and as the little sticker on my chest, which is probably legible, say, go vote. If that's a thing for you right now, or make your plans for doing it when it is an option, please. It's really super important. Yeah, but have a wonderful evening. Take care of each other. Be kind. Love you all. Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.